right, we are finishing We the Children. So they were racing, right? Ben and Robert, and we were in the middle of their race. They're racing their boats. Robert thought he was super sailor, but out on the water, Ben knew he had one weakness. He acted like the Marker boys were made of kryptonite. Robert had bumped into 2 marks early last season, and each time the penalty had cost him a victory. Ever since, he had been taking his marker turns extra wide, sometimes by as much as 10 feet or more. And now Super Sailor was going to get a surprise. As they came level with the red buoy, sure enough, Robert shot a good 12 feet past it before starting his turn. Ben gritted his teeth in concentration, and the moment the nose of his boat passed the buoy, he came about swinging right around the buoy in one smooth motion. Now he was sailing south toward the next marker, and Robert was 2 full lengths behind him. Ben grinned into the wind and wanted to yell something like, "Hey, Big Mouth, I thought you owned this." But that would have made him a big mouth. So he just smiled and shivered and sailed for all he was worth. Because he knew Robert too well. The guy wasn't going to just lay in behind and follow him to the finish line. No. He was going to push himself and his brand new boat and his Olympic racing sails to the limit and take every risk he needed to in order to win. So Ben kept glancing back. And sure enough, Robert had his sheet pulled in very tight and low and was hanging so far back over the side of his boat that his head was almost brushing the waves. So Ben did the same. But it was tricky business. This northern part of the course was farther from shore, and there was a lot more wind out here. Plus, the gusts were stronger. Lost my place. One good microburst could smack the sail right into the water and flip the whole boat. But if Robert could manage it, then he could too. The spray was thick and constant now, and the shallow footwell was filling up fast with water. Rats! Ben let the sail out a little and jammed the sheet into the cleat. The boat instantly slowed down. He grabbed the scoop, leaned forward, and began bailing like crazy. That means scooping the water out from the bottom of his boat. It was cold and risky work, and it was definitely going to cost him some time, but at 8 pounds a gallon, water on board was no good. At least he knew that Robert would have to do the same thing at some point, so he could still keep his lead if he was careful. As he leaned forward to bail one last big scoop of water, a tremendous gust of wind hit the boat. Ben dropped the bailer, pulled the sheet loose, and tillered into the wind all at the same time. Even so, his boat heeled so far over that a good 10 gallons of seawater rushed in across his feet. But he kept his head, righted the boat, and began bailing again furiously to get his hull up out of the waves. He expected Robert to go flying past him at any second, but he didn't. Ben glanced over his shoulder and no sail. 30 feet behind him, he saw a white hull, its centerboard up in the air, completely capsized. Ha! That means that the boat flipped over, and it's now upside down. Robert's boat. But thoughts of victory vanished instantly. He couldn't spot an orange life vest. He didn't see Robert. Reversing course in a flash, Ben, that means turning around, Ben reached the turtled boat in 15 seconds. He let go of his sheet, then yanked the mast ropes loose so his sail dropped to the deck. "Robert!" he shouted. Nothing, except terrible possibilities. Ben looked around for help. The finish line motorboat was speeding toward him, but it was still at least a minute away. Much too long. Ben kicked off his shoes, then ripped off his life vest. He took a deep breath and dove into the freezing water next to Robert's boat. It was like plunging into a silent, slow-motion movie, and he saw Robert right away, arms and legs out like a snow angel. Unconscious and trapped. The buoyant life vest held him pinned up against the hollow underside of the boat. Even though his lungs were burning for a breath of air, Ben grabbed the front of Robert's vest with both hands. Using every last bit of strength, he pulled down hard, then quickly to the side. Once clear of the hull, Robert popped to the surface like a cork. Back up, in the noise of the wind and waves, Ben sucked in a gasp of air and got some seawater, too. Coughing, he managed to flip Robert over so his face was above water. And that's when he saw the cut on Robert's forehead just above one eye. He grabbed the collar of Robert's life jacket and used his other arm to pull toward his sailboat, which had drifted about 15 feet away. But before he had taken 3 strokes, strong hands pulled Robert away from him, up and over the side of the motorboat. And by the time Ben had been hoisted aboard, someone had already gotten the bulky vest off Robert, and a woman was bending over him, starting CPR. Clear the airway. Robert's eyes were still shut, and his lips were blue. Someone put a blanket around Ben's shoulders, but he barely noticed. 2 short, gentle rescue breaths. Ben had never seen a face so white, except for the blood on Robert's forehead. And 30 shallow chest pumps, count them out. Halfway through the chest pumps, Robert coughed. A flood of water gushed from his nose and mouth. He gasped, and the woman turned his head gently to the side to clear his airway, then gave him a couple smacks on the back. He retched more water onto the deck, plus a bunch of other stuff, and everyone aboard the boat cheered. A minute later, the motorboat was speeding toward the pier. Robert was bundled up in 3 wool blankets, stretched out on a cushioned bench. White tape and a piece of gauze covered his cut, and he was shaking all over, still deathly pale. The woman who had done the CPR held a plastic thermos for him, and he took a careful sip of something hot. And that's when he noticed Ben, sitting about 5 feet away. He looked confused. "Hey, I thought you were out ahead of me. What happened?" Ben shrugged. "A lot of stuff." Mr. Wirtz, the finish line official, sat on the seat next to Ben. "I believe you two know each other already, but I think a fresh introduction is in order. Robert Garrett. This is Benjamin Pratt, the young man who just saved your life." There were 2 ambulances waiting at the pier, but Ben refused to get into the one for him. "I'm just wet. Really, I'm fine." And his parents agreed with Ben. As 2 policemen kept the crowd of onlookers out of the way, the other paramedics hustled Robert into the 2nd ambulance. Just before they closed the back doors, he lifted his head up off the stretcher and called out, "Hey, Pratt, I know I could have caught up to you, and I want a rematch, okay?" Ben grinned at him. "Anytime." A reporter from the Edgeport Pennant wanted Ben to describe the race and the rescue, but his mom shooed the young woman away. "No," she said firmly. "We've got to get him home now." And as she guided Ben by one elbow, his dad moved out ahead of them, opening a path through the crowd. Once they got to the parking lot, his dad took Ben's other elbow. He didn't really need help, but he let his knees sag a little anyway, and both his parents held on tight. It felt good. When they were almost to the car, his dad gave Ben's arm an extra squeeze. "You did great out there," he said. "In every way, we're so proud of you." His mom nodded and smiled. "I know Robert has never been your favorite person in the world, but right now I can guarantee that you're his favorite, and his parents too." Ben still had the blanket wrapped around him like a sleeping bag, so he had to back his way into the front seat of his mom's car and then swing his legs inside. His dad buckled him in and then pushed his damp hair up off his forehead. "See you next Saturday, okay? And we'll talk this week. Really, a great day, Ben, a great day. So I'll see you." "See you, Dad." His father started to shut the car door, but suddenly pulled it pulled it wide again, then leaned in and kissed Ben on the top of his head. I'm just so glad you're safe, Ben. Me too, Dad. Good. I'll see you. Ben nodded and smiled up into his dad's face as he shut the door, then watched as he turned and began walking back toward Parsons Marina. And right away, Ben felt like he had to show his mom he wasn't having unhappy thoughts, even though he was, because that always made her sad, and then it was harder for both of them. So he turned to his mom and smiled. What you said about Robert, it's true. I've never liked that guy. At all. But when his boat flipped, I just went on autopilot or something. Well, your father was right. You certainly did everything great out there, and we're very proud of you. She started the car, but before she had put it in gear, there was a tap on Ben's window. He turned quickly, thinking it was his dad again. But it was Jill, with a pair of binoculars hanging around her neck. He smiled and put his window down. Hi, Ben. Hi, Mrs. Pratt. Hi, Jill, she said. It's good to see you. Good to see you, too. What are you doing here? Ben said. What do you think? I'm a huge sailing fan, so I came to watch the race. And instead, I got to see the big rescue scene. Very cool. Hero stuff. Nah, said Ben. It just sort of happened. Right. Well, anyway, just wanted to say hi. And I can't wait to talk to Robert to hear his side of the story. Yeah, said Ben. Maybe he's the one who rescued me. Jill smiled. Anyway, see you Monday. And be sure to email me the stuff about that social studies project, okay? Right, he said. See you Monday. As his mom drove out of the parking lot, she said, You two are working on a social studies project? Yeah, just some stuff we're doing for extra credit about the history of the Oak School. His mom said. That sounds fun. Yeah, said Ben. I think it's going to be pretty interesting. That's the end. There is a sneak peek into the next book, but I'm going to read that later. I have a question for you. Here's your assignment for today. Would you like to be the main character in this story? Why or why not? You can choose which character, because there are two main characters right now. There's Ben and there's Jill. So you can choose. Would you like to be the main character in this story, Ben or Jill? Why or why not? If not, who would you want to be instead? Why? So if you don't want to be one of those two, who would you like to be? And why? Right. There's your assignment. I'll give you a sneak peek to book 2 of this series on another time.